Hi everyone, I'm Scott Schneider. This is Stereo Niche. Hey, this week we're going to go back and talk about a realistic speaker again, but this time we're going to go small. It's the Minimus 77. Stick around. All right, so let's talk about realistic again. So some months ago, I did a review of the Minimus 7, and the Minimus 7 is my baseline for small to bookshelf speakers. So small speakers to bookshelf speakers. But I hadn't done another review since then, so I have not done a comparison yet to my baseline. At the same time, I actually recently refoamed these, so they were kind of ready to go. So I thought, well, why not kind of stick with the realistic theme here for a little bit longer and do the Minimus 7s. So the Minimus the Minimus 7 started manufacture and was released in 1977 and ran all the way through 1993. So it had a very long run. I'm pretty sure millions of those were sold. They're fantastic little speakers. And so along the way, unlike all the other lines at Radio Shack, the realistic different model lines would expand and contract, to the market. So the Minimus 77 actually didn't come out until like 1990. And it didn't last long. It was in 1990 and 91, and that's the last I saw it in the catalogs. So these are a little bit larger, as you can tell from the Minimus 7. They're still a two-way. They have the same tweeter from what I understand. The main difference is the woofer size. So on the Minimus 7, it's a 4-inch woofer, and on the Minimus 77, it's a 5-inch. So it got a little bit larger, and it might actually be a 5 1/4, but in the advertising, they called it a 5. But other than that, it's pretty much the same form factor. It's a metal cabinet, very robust. Although I will say, from feel, it doesn't feel as solid as the Minimus 7. Minimus 7 seems to be a little bit more dense, and I think that even though the woofer's smaller, it may have actually a heavier magnet, but I'm not positive of that. But either way, it's still a very small form factor, and very easily put just about anywhere you like. It's roughly an inch in height difference and a little bit more in width. But other than that, it's really quite accommodating to pretty much anywhere. But these are certainly not as popular. The other major difference between them, and it's not as popular because there just weren't that many around. They retail for quite a bit more. The Minimus 7 started out when it was in 1977 around $50 a pair, and by 1990s it had ballooned all the way up to $100 a pair, and the Minimus 77 was around $160 a pair. So I have a feeling that they probably didn't sell nearly as many of the 77s, probably in a large way because it was a $60 cost difference, and probably the consumer probably didn't feel like they were getting that much more value in the size difference here, because they were still offered at the same time. So let's see what else. So it's an 8-ohm speaker as well, obviously a two-way, and the one notable difference between the two, the Minimus 7s, the woofer, the mid woofer, always used a rubber surround, and other than it possibly separating from the cone and needing to reglue it back, they stay fine for the duration. Not so with the 77. For some odd reason, I'm assuming whatever manufacturer they chose to make them, that manufacturer went with a foam surround. So like all foams, they eventually deteriorate and you have to refoam them. And unfortunately, it's a bit of an odd size little foam. There are foams out there. For a while, there weren't really any options, I don't think, to get them. You can get them now. It is a tight fit, but they do fit. You just have to be patient and take your time, and you can get it on there. But once that's done, they're good to go. As I mentioned when I was doing the Minimus 7 review, a lot of following for the Minimus speakers. There's lots of little aftermarket or do-it-yourself modifications you can do. You can tweak the caps a little bit, change the crossover point slightly, and there's some fun modifications. I only have one set of 77. I have, I think, 3 or 4 sets of the Minimus 7, so I may try that at some point. The next work I do, I'm going to recap the Nova Bs first, then I'll come back and review those before I do any Minimus 7s. But anyway, for the Minimus 7, that's just a known issue with them, that those foam surrounds do need replacement. So when you, if you run across a pair, be cognizant of that, and then when you go to look at them, be sure to check it out, and you most likely are going to need to show the seller and say, hey, look, you know, these foams, they've run it out. Unfortunately, you can't just take this grill off that easily. It does pry off carefully, and you can get it off, replace those foams, and you're good to go. And that's, I think, pretty much it for this series. And so we'll do some close-ups now, and then I'll come back, tell you what I think about the sound. See you soon. All right, so took my time, went through and listened to them. If this is the first time you've seen my review, I go through, I compare them. In this case, it's going to be to my baseline, which is the Minimus 7. I've given them a rating in 5 categories, from style to imaging, and then lows, the mids, and the highs. And then I compare them to the Minimus 7s in this case. So let's start off with it. Starting off with style, obviously they pretty much, the Minimus 7 just looks like a mini me here. It's really no big difference. It's a rather small difference. However, I did give them a difference in points. And the reason I did that is because of the difference in the woofer here. And although it's not a style difference, it is a manufacturing difference. And you do have to go through the effort of finding the woofer surrounds and getting them done. For someone that doesn't feel too comfortable doing that, it could be a big deal. So for that reason only, I gave them a point difference. So I gave the Minimus 7s a 12 in style, and I gave the Minimus 77s an 11. Moving on into imaging, they're pretty much the same. The tweeter is the same tweeter. Woofer difference doesn't really, make any difference, and the imaging, they image very well. Now, as a reminder, if you haven't seen the Minimus 7 review, I do listen to these a lot more near field. They're small speakers, you just really can't push them across the room entirely. They do need to be somewhat close together, minimally. And so I do listen to them more near field as that's sort of set up. So if you set them up that way, the imaging is very good. And I was going to mention this in the end, but if you were to pair these with a small subwoofer, you would have a very incredible system. They perform exceptionally well in their imaging. It's airy, it's separation of instruments, voices are right out in the middle and in front of you, just where you would expect them. And there's just not much to complain about. And they're both very capable in that area. So they both get a 16, and couldn't say anything negative about it. Actually, it's going to be kind of a fast review because, to be honest with you, I actually gave it the score for every category. I was very close to thinking that, or I was leaning toward giving them a little bit more, another point on the lows, but the fact of the matter is, it's just not significant enough. Does the extra size, the 5-inch woofer really put out a lot more bass? Not really. It's still lacking. It's still a very tiny box. You just went tinier here. They both need a sub if you really want to do it. I think be pleased. So I ended up giving it a 10 also. That was the only category that I was leaning back and forth on. So I ended up giving them the same because I think you're still going to want, if you want to set it up properly, you're still going to want to sub with either set. On to the mids, again, 15. Mids are excellent. The blending of the tweeter and the woofer mid is very good for both of them. Voicing is just great. You've got that singer right there. It's a very intimate setting because you're actually much closer to the speakers, so it feels more intimate just for that reason alone. And then but the musicality of the soundstage helps with that voicing. In the mid you don't know that just like the Advents, you don't really recognize that you don't have a dedicated mid. You don't feel that here, even though it's a two-way, and they do exceptionally well. So they get a 15, and then the highs, pretty much the same thing because they are the same tweeter. It's sounds exactly the same. All of it is great. Yeah, I would say, and I can't recall if I said this when I did the Minimus 7s, but it has an ADS quality to the tweeter, and which is a good thing. If you've seen my ADS reviews, I love that tweeter. It's such an exceptional tweeter. Same here. It's just pleasing and just not lacking in any way, and no harshness, no shrill. It's just extremely pleasant and blends right in to the mid range, and it's just exceptional. So can't say enough good things about it. Both of them did very well, and both of them have a 15. So on to the total, only because I did 1 point difference with the style. The Minimus 7 has a 68 total. The Minimus 77 has a 67. Not really a significant difference, but if you are leery of refoaming something, could be a decision for you to not buy them, or and to wait for a set of Minimus 77s. And it was very subtle, but on occasion, in total, there's something about the Minimus 7 that I tended to just like. It just seemed a little more balanced overall. When I separated each section out, it was very similar. But when I put it sort of in total, I did find myself sort of favoring the Minimus 7 in a way. And so honestly, I would think if I were to just say, if somebody was to ask me, what do you recommend? I would probably always tell everybody, get a Minimus 7 and then get a small sub, and you'll be peachy. You'll be extremely happy. So that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think. I know probably not that many have 77s, so probably not a lot of feedback on these, but let me know what your experience is and what you guys have run across in the field. So that's it for now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and as always, hit that subscribe button. See you next time.